Thankful Throwback Thursday. Hello, everyone. Today is a Thursday, and I'm going to be starting a new series where I will highlight specific people from our shared human culture who I personally believe humanity should be thankful for. And I'm hoping to give you a little bit more experience and background context behind their history as well. So, our first inspirational human being that I'm going to be digging into is going to be the glorious Ida B. Wells and her fight for equality. So, for those humans who are not already well versed in the history of Ida B. Wells, or as many have kind of coined her on Insta and Twitter right now, it's Ida Bay because she is totally a bay. Ida B. Wells was a famous African American journalist and editor, and she was also a pretty well known suffragist. If you do not know what a suffragette is, that is someone who fights for the right to vote. And she was also a pretty outstanding leader for the civil rights movement. She kind of coined something called data journalism, which I'll get into a little bit later, that she really popularized to help people understand what was going on to the people in her community. So she was able to use her skills to fight the discrimination that she was seeing in society. So, one amazing book that I would love to recommend, and I actually have not gotten a chance to read it yet, is Ida B. the Queen, The Extraordinary Life and Legacy of Ida B. Wells. So if you are looking for your next amazing read, this is definitely one that I would pick up off the shelves ASAP. Something very interesting about it is that it is actually written by her great-great-granddaughter. What I do know about the wonderful Ida B. Wells so far is that she was a person who was held in captivity, and she was born into this condition, but she was able to go from these terrible circumstances to become an investigative reporter. And she actually was able to break a lot of stories about the lynchings that were going on in the South. You can see here this lovely human being. Her name is Michelle Duster, and she is the great granddaughter of Ida. And she did write this book as well as help to design a wonderful doll that is inspired by Ida B. Wells. So, I am not going to call this a Barbie doll. I am going to say that this is an Ida doll because that is exactly what it is. And I think that maybe Barbie should rename their dolls after Ida. But this doll, the Ida B. Wells doll, was actually designed by her great granddaughter, Michelle Duster. She helped them put this together. She made sure that Ida was holding a copy of the Memphis Free Speech, which is pretty outstanding. She helped create the hairstyle, the newspaper, the background, everything you're seeing here. Shout out right now to Mattel because they are doing an Inspiring Women series. And I would just like to say it is about time. And so if you want to get into buying some new dolls for your kiddos, I would be looking at the Inspiring Women series. They have a Rosa Parks doll. They have a whole collection of these amazing figures who are definitely who we want our young ladies to look up to. I personally am a mother of a young girl, and I would much rather have my daughter holding up her Ida B. Wells doll over her head, glorifying her, than those little LOL dolls that are so popular right now. So I would just like to say, I think this is a pretty impressive thing that Mattel is doing, and hopefully they keep it up. To give you a little bit more background on the amazing Ida B. Wells, she created a database of all of the horrors that she saw taking place around her. She put together names, dates, and full accounts of the lynchings that she was seeing happening while she was living in Memphis, Tennessee. So these lynchings were being used to terrorize the African American community and help control the population in the way that they saw fit. And Miss Ida B. Wells puts together this data journalism where she is exposing what is going on and letting the rest of the nation see how difficult it is for African Americans in the South at this time period. Now, to give you a bit more information on this historic figure, I am going to be reading you parts of a Common Lit article that is titled The Story of Ida B. Wells. So, if you're wanting to dig a little deeper into her wonderful history, that is where I'm going to get us started right now. This is written by Shannon Moreau, and you can find a full copy of the article on commonlit.org. So, Ida B. Wells was a young journalist from Memphis, Tennessee, and she stepped out of the Natchez, Mississippi church with a smile on her face. She had just signed up 20 new subscribers for Free Speech, the black newspaper she owned with her business partner, J.L. Fleming. Since she had begun traveling up and down the Mississippi Valley seeking new subscriptions, the Memphis Weekly's readership had more than doubled. So if you are not locally from Tennessee, or if you've never been to West Tennessee, Memphis is very close to Mississippi. So if you wanted to go to Memphis, it would be hop, skip, and a jump to get you into Mississippi. So this would have been a somewhat more difficult trip during her time period, since she did live between 1862 and 1931, and she would have primarily had to go by train travel. So that's kind of where we're picking up here with our context. So the minister of the church walked up to Ida with a newspaper in his hand. "Miss Wells, something bad's happened in Memphis." A bolt of fear shot through Ida. Her hand shook slightly as she took the 10 March 1892 edition of the Memphis Commercial. The night before, a mob of white men had seized 3 black grocery store owners, dragged them down to the railroad tracks, and shot them to death. One of the store owners, Thomas Moss, had begged for his life for the sake of his wife, daughter, and unborn child. When he realized he was going to die, he said, "Tell my people to go west. There is no justice for them here." Ida's heart nearly stopped. She looked up into the minister's solemn face. "It can't be." Ida's eyes welled with tears. "Thomas Moss and his wife are my good friends. I'm their godmother to their daughter, Maureen. This can't have happened to him." Ida caught the next train back to Memphis. During the trip, she battled feelings of anger, shock, grief, and horror. This was not the first time that she had been touched by tragedy, nor was it the first time that she had experienced the injustices against blacks in the post-Civil War South. Ida was born the daughter of slaves in Holly Springs, Mississippi in 1862. 3 years before the end of the Civil War, after emancipation, her father worked as a carpenter. He built the house in which he and his wife raised their 8 children. As a child, Ida attended the elementary school at Rust College, which had been founded in 1866 by Methodist missionaries from the North. Many white Southerners rebelled against citizenship for former slaves. Ida remembered hearing about midnight raids by the Ku Klux Klan, a terrorist group bent on maintaining white supremacy. Ida's mother used to pace the floor at night, waiting for her husband to come home from his political meetings. In 1878, A yellow fever epidemic swept through Holly Springs. Both of Ida's parents and her baby brother perished. At age 16, she quit school to take care of her 6 brothers and sisters. So I'm going to pause here. If you do not know what the Emancipation Proclamation is, it is referring to the historical abolishment of slavery. This is when they said that it was no longer legal to keep other human beings in captivity and have them do forced labor. So this is when they said that slaves would officially be freed following the Civil War. Ida quit school to take care of her 6 brothers and sisters. Ida quit school to take care of her 6 brothers and sisters. In 1883, when Ida was just 21, she packed up and moved herself and her 2 youngest sisters to Memphis, Tennessee, to live with a widowed aunt. She accepted a teaching position in a rural school in Woodstock and commuted to and from work by train. That same year, the Supreme Court ruled that the Civil Rights Act of 1875, which prohibited segregation in the transportation and public places, was unconstitutional. So if you don't know the word prohibited means that it stops someone from doing something. And the separation of races is what it is referring to whenever it says segregation, if you've not heard that term before. And when it says something is unconstitutional, that means that it is not according to the Constitution of the United States, which is the governance with which all Americans are supposed to be following. Southern legislatures had already passed laws that barred blacks from voting. Now, the way was paved for a rigid system of segregation, beginning with the railroads. In May 1884, Ida was traveling from Memphis to Woodstock when her conductor approached her. "I can't take your ticket here," he told her. "You'll have to move to the smoking car." "I have a first-class ticket," Ida replied. "This is my rightful seat." The conductor disappeared. A few minutes later, he returned with 2 baggage clerks. The 3 men dragged Ida from her seat while the white passengers clapped. Ida refused to go into the smoking car. Instead, she got off the train at the next station. Although she hired a lawyer and sued the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad for discrimination, she lost her case in 1887. So, if you haven't been following along very well, this is the first place where Ida has had difficulty in trying to overcome her adversity, but she just keeps fighting. Now, riding from Natchez back to Memphis, Ida was about to face the 3rd test in her life. Ida arrived in Memphis too late to attend Thomas Moss's funeral, but she went straight to comfort his pregnant widow, Betty, and their daughter, Maureen. She later wrote, "I have no power to describe the feeling of horror that possessed every member of the race. Brutal killings of blacks in the South were on the rise, and they were going unpunished by the law." "Betty," Ida said to the tearful widow, "I'll never forget the talks that Thomas and I had when he delivered mail to the free speech every day. He believed that we should defend the cause of right and fight wrong wherever we saw it." Ida fought injustice against blacks in the best way that she knew how, with her pen. The first article she'd ever published had been about her incident with the railroad. Subsequent stories dealt with the education and religion. She was now about to tackle the biggest issue of her career. The Free Speech published Ida's editorial. It said in part, "The city of Memphis has demonstrated that neither character nor standing avails the blacks if he dares to protect himself against the white man or become his rival. There is therefore only one thing left that we can do: save our money and leave town, which will neither protect our lives and property nor give us a fair trial in the courts, but takes us out and murders us in cold blood when accused by white persons. After Betty Moss gave birth to a son, Thomas Moss Jr., the widow moved her family to Indiana. Many other black citizens were packing up and leaving Memphis as well. This exodus got the attention of the white businessmen and city officials. They were losing labor and money to the black people. The daily papers printed editorials urging black citizens to stay. Ida countered with her own articles describing the new lives people were making for themselves in the Oklahoma Territory. Those who remained in Memphis boycotted the newly opened streetcar line. 2 officials from the City Railway Company came to the Free Speech office and asked Ida to tell her people to ride the streetcars again. In her next article for the Free Speech, she told her readers to keep up the boycott. Ida was trying to decide where she herself wanted to go. A few years before, she had met T. Thomas Fortune, a New York newspaper editor, at a press convention. Fortune wrote Ida and asked her to come look at New York City before she decided where to settle down. Ida had already planned to attend an African Methodist Episcopal Conference in Philadelphia. From there, she took a train east to visit New York. Fortune met her at the train station. "Well, I have been trying for a long time to get you to New York," he said. "But now that you are here, I'm afraid you'll have to stay." Ida said, "I don't understand what you mean." "That ruckus you kicked up in Memphis? When I heard about it, I knew it had to be you because it sounded so like you." Ida was totally bewildered. "What are you talking about?" "Haven't you seen the morning newspaper?" Fortune asked. "No." He handed her a copy of the New York Sun. A group of Memphis citizens had stormed the offices of Free Speech during the night. They had destroyed all of the equipment and run Ida's business partner, J.L. Fleming, out of town. They left a note among the ruins. Anybody who tried to publish the paper again would be punished by death. If you would like to hear how this story ends, please stay tuned for part 2 of the Ida B. Wells Historical Chronicle. Thank you. Bye.